Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. We have some great topics planned. We're going to discuss playoffs, Fanatics failures, and even more. But first, I want to discuss who is on the podcast with me. We have Jeff, Ty, Chris, and Phil. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm Jeff, my favorite cardboard on Instagram. Big Brewer fan, sad about the playoffs.
Nice. Ty?
Michael Harris to Austin Riley for the win.
Yeah. Was that a Bryce Harper mistake or just a good play by Harris? Who knows?
That's legit. That's all I care.
A little from column A and a little from column B.
That's all I care about.
Chris?
I'm Chris, baseball card addict, huge Braves fan, and my adrenaline is finally coming down from last night. So if I just pass out midway, I apologize.
Yeah, Phil and I were poking fun at Chris yesterday. He was pretty feisty in the group chat last night. Pretty feisty. And not last but not least, we have producer Lance we'll get to. But Phil.
What's going on? Phil from Wilmington. They call me Filmington. I became a Phillies fan last week.
And producer Lance.
Hey, Lance, another part of the Rockies fandom here, along with Scott.
This is 40% of the Rockies fandom in the world.
Hey, I do have a friend, John, a former coworker, who is a Rockies fan, and he said, "I didn't know there were more of me."
Oh my gosh, we have to have him on the show.
Part of the club.
Oh, poor John. I feel bad for him already. All right. Well, let's hop into this. The very first thing, we have Ty on this podcast. If you don't know who Ty is, he goes by Drummond Collector, Teapot, whole bunch of different things. But you might have seen him on YouTube on the Sports Card Investor channel. Recently, Ty, there's big news that Jeff Wilson, Sports Card Investor, announced. Can you tell what that news is real quick?
Yeah, really huge, awesome news. Jeff, in partnership with a couple of local ATL guys, opening a huge 14,000 square foot physical brick and mortar card shop in Atlanta, less than a mile from Truist Park, Braves Stadium. Awesome location, right off 75. I'm super stoked because my commute will be cut in half, if not more than that. It's also just going to be really cool. We're moving all of our studios, our offices for SCI into the back part of the shop. Tons of inventory, live selling 24/7. They're looking to kind of push the envelope and just see what we can do that's a little bit different, a little bit more modern, a little bit more cutting edge. And there's going to be some really cool other announcements related to this shop yet to come. So I'm really excited to share those, some really, really innovative stuff. And I'm pretty pumped about it. It's going to be legit.
Is that the biggest sports card shop in the world officially? Do you know?
It should be. I don't know of a larger one. It will definitely be bigger than Burbank or Joe Davis or some of the other ones, obviously, in the US. I'm not aware of any that are bigger internationally. So I think so. We might have to call Guinness.
Nice. That'd be great to get you into the world record books, Ty. But one thing I'll also say, there's been quite a bit of people who aren't quite as excited as you about this shop. If you pay attention to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or anywhere else where people can complain, they are kind of not feeling too optimistic about that. They're concerned that it's going to be more of like, pushing Fanatics' agenda. What do you have to say to those haters, Ty?
I think the response to this has been overwhelmingly positive.
Good.
Compared to some other things sometimes that have happened with our company, for good or for bad. So we've gotten tons of awesome DMs, awesome support. And yeah, we're definitely looking to have Fanatics as a strong partner. That's a big part of it. They're going to be taking over everything. They're already well on their way in that process. So obviously having sealed product, singles, all kinds of things like that is going to be a big part of it. Fanatics obviously created their live selling platform. So I like to keep it real, and we're maybe going to get into a little bit of that today, but I think it's actually really exciting to have kind of a closer relationship with them and to be able to give them real feedback, to hopefully be a voice box for the community, because not only will we have a shop, which will be a partnership, but we also have what is really the biggest content brand associated with the hobby as well. And we're always looking for ways to hear and kind of repeat back to some of these other companies what the hobby is communicating to us.
Nice. Thank you, Ty. I think that is enough sports card investor talk, only because they do not sponsor us. So not too much praise. Anyway, so next thing I want to discuss is Topps update. Recently it came out that Topps has been, obviously Topps update, there's Topps Series 1, Topps Series 2, and Topps update. 3 of the most important releases every single year, up there also with Topps Chrome, maybe Bowman Chrome, like the most sought after releases. And Topps on their website said it was 24 packs with 12 cards per pack per hobby box. And recently, hobby boxes have been received by some individuals And that is not what the box says. Now it says 20 packs per box with 12 cards per pack. So they cut 4 packs out. That's not like that happens sometimes where they have different amounts of packs. Some years it was 36, other years it was 24, but they would increase the number of cards per pack. This is the first year they just cut them out entirely, completely different than the sales sheet. I want to gauge what you all think about this. So I want to start with Chris. What do you think about all this going on?
I pretty much, when we talked about this earlier, I think you said it best. Like, what are they doing, and how could they not just give everyone 4 more packs of base cards, like, to fill that number out? It just seems, I don't know, it's inexplicable. I haven't heard it. I don't know if did they make any announcement about this, or did people just start realizing it when actual physical boxes were arriving?
Just when physical boxes were arriving is my understanding from being on Twitter. I've kind of been avoiding Twitter the last few days with playoff baseball. It gets pretty intense, but I just saw it on Twitter. So I did see some people speculating, but it is Twitter. So take that for what it's worth, that, it's lying on the sales sheets. They might have to refund people if they are upset and all this stuff. Who knows? But that was all where I got the information from. Jeff, do you have any thoughts? I feel like you have some thoughts brewing from the last couple of weeks with Topps.
Brewing. I like what you did there.
You like that? Thanks.
Yeah, it's really perplexing, this decision. And obviously somebody had to make the decision. Well, we're going to save a few cents per box. It goes hand in hand with the announcement this week that Stadium Club, which is a collector's favorite set, favorite box, favorite product to come out, has been pushed to January of next year. And then it just got me thinking that maybe they were going to also short the packs in there compared to the sell sheet, and thought, based on this feedback they've gotten from Update, that, whoa, we better just scrap it and get back to it. But yeah, it leads to a bigger issue with Fanatics. And when they took over Topps, their big promise was that they were going to have the best interest of collectors in mind, and they were going to get all these operations in order. And so far, that hasn't really been the case. And I like what they're doing in terms of promotions, whether the Taco Fractor was a hit or miss, which we've talked about. At least they're trying some new things. But if they can't get the cards to the collectors, the people that want the product, that's a big issue. And we've talked about this repeatedly, all the different sets that are coming out. And this week, one of the baseball card art of Bob Ross, somehow they're putting Bob Ross into I'm not sure what the set is actually called, but it seems like a cash grab to me. And instead of sending out Stadium Club, which there's a lot of collectors out there that love this set, they are sending more of this stuff. So it's just frustrating. And I feel like they're doing a lot of promotions. The CEO of Fanatics is out there at all these parties and all these celebrity gatherings. But if they're really concerned about the collector, why isn't that priority number one, to get the cards out, the cards that they say they're going to get out on time, and to the people that want them?
So that made me think of something. Do you remember when they were I think it was the spring, when they said the biggest announcement of our generation is happening in the sports card world, our generation, and everyone was speculating what it was. And it was just the MLB debut patches. What it is, like, the rookies wear an MLB debut patch on their jersey, and that would be put into a card. But we haven't really heard much about that. They're still putting into cards. I'm guessing it's going to be like a dynasty product, not a flagship product, like a Topps Update. But that's not that big of a thing. And so they're really trying, like Taco Fractors. They're doing fun things, but I don't think any of it is really moving the needle. One thing I want to point out, and then I want to hear Phil's thoughts, because I'm sure Phil has great thoughts as always. But with this, they cut gallery. They cut some really iconic, you can call it iconic, but older sets. But I thought that was a good thing. But now they're introducing Bob Ross, which is a cool thought and concept, but it's just replacing crap with crap a little bit, in my opinion. Phil, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think products like Gallery, clearly authentic. I think they had a longer track record of not being incredibly successful from the standpoint of, the number one metric to them is sales, right? And velocity of sales from Fanatics perspective. So I think this gives them a chance to introduce new stuff. And at least with these newer sets, with Cosmic last year, with Gilded this year, or came out in January, but it was last year's product, right? At least they're starting in kind of like small batches. Print runs are small. And I think that's why we're seeing these kind of like head scratcher type new sets that end up increasing in price from release date. So you're almost rewarded by taking a chance on a set that looks like it might not receive the highest amount of sentiment upon release. So I don't really fault them for that. I think they're just trying to be innovative. Regarding the latest screw up with the 20 packs and Tops update, I mean, this is just, this is just another data point that kind of shows that there's some serious growing pains going on with this acquisition. I think last year where they screwed up Topps Chrome, that whole disaster, and Fanatics made up for it by issuing these silver packs, which again received a lot of scrutiny. I think a lot of people thought that was Topps screwing up and Fanatics cleaning it up. But I think now with the two perfractor situation with Bowman Chrome, and with this situation where a lot of people were banking on getting the chance at X number of gold cards per, it's got gold ratios by pack. It's not by box. So they're ultimately getting screwed when the box has fewer packs. I think from Topps and Fanatics perspective, I understand why they did it, and they're taking those 4 extra packs and they're putting them in other boxes that they can also sell. It's just going to lead to higher revenues, but they can't do this. They literally can't do this. People have already pre-ordered the product. Same thing with Stadium Club. People have already pre-ordered that, right? They've already paid for it. Topps has known that it's not going to come out in the immediate future. And now they're telling people now after the window's closed, the pre-order window, right? If I'm correct, that's just not cool.
Totally agree. Chris, looks like you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I just feel like this is the whole joy of baseball set. I feel like this little moment is kind of a microcosm of how it feels Fanatics is going. Like they're less interested in long-term collectors, like people like us, and they're more interested in getting new people attracted to the hobby. Like I don't know a lot of people like us who saw the joy of baseball and were like, yes, I will spend $200 on this. No, but I bet there are people that have never bought baseball cards before that heard about that and probably bought a box or two. And it seems like that means more to Fanatics right now. So the stuff that we collectors like, they're just like, throw it on the back burner. We'll get to it eventually. Or we'll just take 4 packs out and print more boxes and no one's going to complain. That's kind of how it starts to feel after a while.
Do we really think Fanatics has anyone's interest in mind aside from growing revenue, honestly?
Well, I'd just like to say they have such an opportunity to do so many cool things that would hardly cost anything. I mean, their relationship that Fanatics has with the leagues in terms of apparel and equipment and licensing, they could get they could have bought, say, Acuna's base that was his 70th steel, cut that up and put it in chase cards, and that would be awesome. And that would cost them next to nothing.
Well, isn't that the purpose of Topps now, though? Or do you think
there is no purpose to Topps now?
But that's what they do. They literally take the equipment like bases. Like that does happen in Topps now. But do you wish, Jeff, that they would
occasionally? But it could be a hat or a jersey or part of a bat from, I don't know, any of these milestones. Maybe Bryce Harper's 300th home run. Take pieces of that bat and put it as a chase product. I just think they have so many opportunities to do something that would cost very little and take very little effort.
I think I was actually personally really excited when I heard about the Bob Ross Joy of Baseball. Feels very Gintery. I'm a Bob Ross guy. I love the set. There was another product from Cardsmiths. It was like a Bob Ross set. It wasn't baseball. It was just Bob Ross cards. Kind of a cult following, right? I had a thermochromatic mug that changes colors and turns into a Bob Ross painting. I like it. I think it's cool. What I don't like is that got prioritized over Stadium Club coming out. You can't say, okay, we're going to push Stadium Club out a week before it's set to release. That's now delayed until January, but here's some Bob Ross cards, frankly, at a price point that I think was overpriced at $200. Apparently not, because now in the secondary market, it's going for $300. I looked at that checklist. I looked at the pack odds. I looked at the things, if we can trust those. And I didn't see anything in that product that stood out enough to me to make it feel like it would be a good value proposition to open that product. I will definitely be looking to buy some singles of it. I think there's some cool looking cards in it. I probably will wait a while. It sounds like, if the product's going for $300 a box, that people are going to be massively overpaying for those cards when they come out. But I think there's some pretty cool ones in it. I don't understand pushing it back, like what is kind of a flagship product. Yes, and maybe it's B tier in most people's eyes, not in many of ours, while you release something new. You can't talk innovation. We're trying all these things, but then prioritize novelty over the foundation of what has made a company like rock solid for, decades and decades. So I don't have a problem personally, like with the taco fracture concept. I think it's interesting. It wasn't for me. I definitely don't want Taco Bell for life. That just sounds like a good way to have an appendectomy in your future. But they're trying things. I'm not going to fault them for that, but don't lose sight of what like made Topps a great company in the first place. And I think that's part of the big problem. I will say one thing that they did do that was really cool. It's not baseball, it's basketball. And whether or not it was them being agile and making something out of nothing, or whether they intended it the whole time, when Bowman Chrome University came out for basketball, the Victor Wembanyama cards, which were massively hyped, were redemptions. And then they said, hey, everybody, if you have one of these, come, we're going to pay all expenses for you and a guest to fly to Texas to come to this event, to meet Victor Wembanyama, to get your signed auto in person. And then one person got the like custom inscription, my first auto ever. That's super cool. That is a very cool thing. I love seeing that. I think they should be doing more of that with other athletes. But get your products out on time. Get the right number of packs. At least do what you're saying going to do. Get your pack odds in order. I work in software. If the app doesn't work, if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, then all the new innovations and everything else that you might be working on are going to be completely worthless if you can't count on the thing being reliable in the first place. So I think that's, that would be my message to Fanatics is get the, the bottom layer shored up and get all your operations tightened up and then start bringing the new stuff to us.
Phil, as a sealed wax collector or investor, whatever you want to call it, how enticing at all is a product like Bob Ross? Like, is that something you want to buy because it is a random one-off unique thing, or is it you staying away from it?
The scratch ticket side of me, which does not dominate the more rational side of me in most cases, would say that it could be an attractive product and one that I might be able to get in and out of within 2 or 3 weeks time. But that's not going to fit the mold, the profile of something I'd ever put a lot of money into, something that I'd ever be willing to sit on for longer than 3 months. Tons of volatility from the get-go, not having any history on future or previous prices, previous demand, previous appreciation patterns, not understanding they made X amount last year, and of this product, I know a certain amount of it's going to be demanded by collectors versus breakers versus crackheads versus speculators and, wax investors or what have you. But yeah, man, I'm not going to touch this product at all. I'd even feel, so I have a business where I, put these into products and resell them. I'd even feel like it would be too risky to hold for a period of 30 days, because at the end of the day, that market value is something that I'm going to have to absorb if there's a hit by the time that I issue it versus when I buy it.
That's a great point. And I want to pose another question just for anybody. I want to hear your thoughts. We're talking about these things like Ty. It's really cool. They did that Victor Wembanyama thing, right? But those cards were really expensive to get into. They were really expensive. And so only people that really could get them to go to that fun event, it was in Texas, I think, wasn't it? San Antonio or whatever it was. But only people that could go to that were those that had deeper pockets to do it. So they are making changes that are kind of cool, but it's like the ultra high end. And so it's just kind of feeding to the breaking, gambling. Like, are they really doing anything right now for collectors?
So actually,
in my opinion,
my boss, Jeff Wilson, went to that event as media coverage. And I believe he told me more than half of the people there pulled the redemptions themselves.
They did pull.
And these were not and some of them were breaker hits, some of them were other things. There were several kids there, like with their mom or dad. And the guy who ultimately won the randomly given away, custom inscribed one, the one that everybody wanted, was just some average guy who had literally bought the box he bought it online because he heard about the opportunity to meet Wembanyama and the whole event and everything. So he said, I'm going to try my luck. He went and bought a box. It came a day earlier than it was supposed to, which was literally the last day that he could redeem it. He hit the redemption and then immediately contacted Fanatics at 8 p.m. It was do this before midnight, 8 p.m., gets his tickets, goes, and then suddenly wins this card that I don't know what it would sell for on open market, but it's certainly not a small amount of money.
That's interesting. I guess I would just love to see more for the average collector. But again,
anything that has value in an experience like that is going to command secondary market value. Like there's no two ways around that. You can't say you couldn't even say like you can't sell this or you can't, XYZ. Like, I mean, either way, it could be life-changing. Maybe for some person they sell it for $5,000 and then they get that money and somebody else gets to go do the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's cool to hear that over half or around half even were people that pulled it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I do think overall, obviously Fanatics' goal is probably slightly different than what Topps was trying to do. They both wanted to make money. At the end of the day, they're only printing sports cards for money. That's not just to be nice to us. And I think we all need to understand that. And at the end of the day, I think that there are some fun things down the road for Fanatics. It's just like everybody mentioned, there's growing pains when you acquire a new business and figure out the logistics and all of that. So anybody have any extra thoughts before we jump into the next topic? Anything that we have?
The real question is, are there 2 platinum 1-of-1s in update?
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? The real question is they're going to have the same Spencer Strider image in this set too. Or Spencer Strider at all.
Or who's going to buy it if Yuri Perez is the best rookie?
Yuri Perez, future Hall of Famer. Anyways, Jeff, you had a thought you were going to say.
Well, I just wanted to say one of the other promises that Fanatics said when they took over was they're going to get everything back on schedule. And now hearing that we're going to get 2023 products already in 2024, that's just disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. I would love if we stopped doing that. Basketball, it makes sense to have it in multiple years because they're at least playing in that year. No baseball's played in 2024. I don't think any product from 2023 should be released in 2024. Just my thoughts.
We've seen them improve some stuff though. I think how many products came out this past January for last year's sets? It was insane. Like December and January were probably the busiest months. So I think at least this year, I think they got out obviously Topps Chrome sooner. Bowman Chrome Sapphire allegedly will come out soon, and that was a product that came out in January. So Stadium Club, unfortunately, not so much, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with like November, December. Bowman Draft is usually a product that does not get delayed for very obvious reasons.
Hey, maybe like Topps updates out earlier this year than it was last year. Like, so I do agree with that. Right. And maybe they're doing something really cool with Stadium Club. Maybe they're making it all on card autographs, no redemptions. And that's why it was delayed. Like that was something they really hit on. So if that was the case, Jeff, Chris, Ty, those huge fans of that set, would you be happier if it was delayed, meaning there was no redemptions?
I don't care about the redemptions, but if they delayed it and then the Chrome autographs that are in there are all on card and not stickers,
that's cool.
Then I would accept the delay for that.
Yeah, because they've mentioned
to get those damn stickers out of there.
They should say that though. From a PR standpoint, they should come out and say that. They'd get a lot more understanding than just no real reason. We're just pushing it 3 months.
Yeah, generally speaking, you brought this up. What would you guys prefer, stickers or redemptions? Because I'll take the redemption and wait all day long rather than deal with a sticker.
With Fanatics, I take a redemption. With Panini, I don't know because you might never see it.
That's true. Yeah, I've heard some.
That's true. That's true.
So for baseball, I would take a redemption. I usually feel like you usually get your cards.
As long as they don't expire. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, they usually expire after 2 years. It used to be 3 years for a lot of the Bowman products, but that hurts me as a sealed wax holder.
Exactly.
Especially when it's like the top guys, like 100% redemption. So 2018 Bowman for a while. Luis Robert, not Ohtani, was carrying that product. And his stuff all expired at like after 2 or 3 years. And that product saw a lot of resistance afterwards for a while.
That's great. I want to ask Producer Lance a question. Producer Lance, what is your thoughts as an outsider on sticker autographs? Do you know what a sticker autograph is?
So that's when the player signs a whole bunch of autographs and then
a sheet of stickers.
And then Topps goes in and puts it on the stickers, right? Or on the cards. Okay. For me, that sounds like lazy almost on Topps's case. If I was gonna collect a card, I would want. When I was a kid, you'd go to the games and you'd go like next to the field there, and you'd hold out your cards with a marker, right? And you hope that the players would sign a ball or your card or whatever. And if they did sign on the card, it meant something, right? It meant like like I got to interact with this player. When it's on a sticker, it feels like there's like this like third party kind of interacting.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you're just kind of, it feels disconnected, and I don't think that I would love that if I was a collector.
What if Mike Trout's agent walked up to you before a game and stuck his sticker to your card? What would you think?
If he stuck Mike Trout's sticker to my card?
Yeah.
My card of Roy Halladay? I don't think I'd love that. I don't know.
That would actually be pretty cool. But all right. Great. Well, I think that we actually should jump into our next topic because this one could go long, but we have about 10 minutes. So let's see what we can do. Playoffs. Playoffs are here. It's been kind of wild. It's been kind of wild overall the last little bit. You know, there's like the talk about the 1 seeds needing not to have a week off. We've seen Dodgers, Braves, Orioles all struggle. Braves have come back before Chris says anything, and they look good now, but it took 2 games. And then you have the Astros, who they even went 1 series to 1 series, right? So I guess my question, let's talk about playoffs. And I want to ask you the question of baseball versus other sports. We see other sports are a lot easier to be consistent in, right? Players don't shoot 30% from the field in basketball and be considered a good player most of the time. But in baseball, if you have a 300 average, you're a great player. So it's extremely easy to have slumps. We're seeing some players like Clayton Kershaw, who has been the literal best pitcher since the live ball era, who has the best ERA plus, best lefty of all time, arguably in the regular season. He's had a tough postseason career. Kershaw might be an interesting example because he has a full season's worth of stats. He has about 32 starts. Then we see other players like Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, Ted Williams, Mike Trout, all these different players who've never won a ring, and they never really even had postseason success in any way whatsoever. So what are your thoughts on playoffs affecting baseball cards? Do you think they should? Because we have Randy Arozarena, who's one of the best playoff players ever. We have George Springer, Carlos Correa, great playoff players, but that doesn't translate to the hobby. Is it overblown when people say so-and-so isn't clutch in the playoffs? I'll open the floor to anybody who wants to share their thoughts first.
I think it's like frosting. It's like frosting on the cupcake, or, whatever bad food analogy you want to use. I just got done cooking stuff for a few hours. If you do well in the playoffs and you do well in the regular season, that definitely, I think, helps your legacy. Those, you mentioned Derek Jeter, like those things go together. It's like, look at this guy just did it all around. But if all you do is show up randomly in the playoffs and hit a few dingers and maybe win a championship or not, but you don't have the stats and the accolades during the regular season to get you a Hall of Fame worthy career, nobody's remembering that. I think it's just a question of amnesia. Like people don't remember it. They just year by year by year by year.
Yeah.
It gets harder and harder to even remember who was in the World Series in what year. Maybe you remember the matchup, but it was like, was that 2015? Who knows? And it's hard to remember those moments and to remember those performances unless you're like really a stat geek, which a lot of baseball people are. But I think it's more of like did this person show up in the biggest moment plus pile up the stats, which is obviously such a big part of baseball cards in particular.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I mean, I feel like the baseball is such a numbers sport and numbers are such a focus, but that's all regular season numbers. And maybe part of that is until 1969, you only had 2 teams make the playoffs. And then for the next 3 decades, you had 4 teams make the playoffs. So there are a lot more non-playoff teams. So it just seems like everybody can name the regular season home run leaders, but playoff home run leaders, it's a less obvious thing. So I think like you said, frosting is a good way to look at it. It definitely can add value to a player, but I don't think it detracts much in general if they have a really successful regular season career.
Yeah.
So let's play a game. Let's talk about, can you name the most dominant playoff players of all time? Right? You can't even think of it. You want to guess who number 1 is? I'll just tell you. Turkey Stearns.
Turkey Stearns.
I mean, what is your criteria for this question?
I just went to StatHead, did OPS for, playoffs games.
Okay.
You have Vince Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, and then Steel Arm Davis. You can't forget him. Troy Gloss. And so my point is, like, it might be blown out of proportion. Plus, it's such a hard sport because you could have a slump for 2 games, like, right? So Mookie Betts is being blown up on Twitter. And he was bad last year, but the 2 years prior, he was really good, helped them win a World Series. But last year, he was a little bit slow because it was 4 games, 1 series. And then he's had 1 over 3 with a walk, 1 over 4, and he's getting blown up, right? It's 2 games. We pride ourselves as baseball fans, 162 games. I understand it's clutch, but is it blown out of proportion?
Absolutely. I mean, Betts, when I'm trying to think, 2021, game 5 against the Giants, Betts had, I think, 4 hits, and he's one of like 2 people maybe with 4 hits in an elimination playoff game, like a winner take all. Like, it's just sample size in baseball. But also, if we could just briefly compare baseball to other sports, like quarterbacks or even like an NBA superstar, like if the quarterback has a bad game, the team loses. Yes. Almost 99% of the time. So almost like playoff pressure is squarely on one person. In baseball, like you can go 5 for 5 with 5 solo home runs, and your team can lose very, very easily.
Yep.
So I don't think people remember necessarily whose numbers were great, but they remember kind of the teams that won. Like it's really hard to equate one baseball player on a team to like a quarterback or even like Michael Jordan. Like if Michael Jordan had a bad playoff game, that team is probably going to lose.
Or big moments. If the Braves go on to win it all, you'll remember the Paris catch to Riley double play.
For sure. And the Riley home run. Yeah. I mean, Young Thick had quite a game. But I was trying to think of like things I could compare players. The only thing I could think of is like Mariano Rivera, when the Yankees had their dynasty from 96 to 2001. In the playoffs, during those, 5 years, 6 years, Mariano Rivera had 2 bad games. And those are the only 2 years the Yankees did not win the World Series. So, I mean, that's probably about the closest we can say to a player being that important, like close to a quarterback, close to like an NBA superstar. Like if Giannis plays poorly, the Bucks have no chance.
Yeah.
But Freeman, I mean, last year or 2 years when the Braves won the World Series, when they played the Dodgers, Freeman went 0 for 8 with 7 Ks in the first 2 games of that series. And the Braves were up 2-0 headed to LA. So like bad players can have bad games. It's boring, but someone on the team has got to pick them up. And yeah, I've seen Mookie Betts getting shredded. And I have Dodger fans who are like furious at Freddie Freeman for going like 1 for 7 in 2 games. But that's just like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. What's really interesting from a card perspective is that there is actually a lot of hype around the players who do show up. I remember last year, Jeremy Pena's cards just like got lit on fire.
Oh, wow.
And this year, if you look at the players, any of these guys, Moreno, some of these other guys who are showing up in the playoffs. Yeah, Stott's his cards are up like 56% or something in the last week. Some especially players who are otherwise not, notable and fly under the radar, and then they have like a big home run. Their stuff can go, absolutely on fire. It'd be really interesting to me. One player who I do remember because it was so torturous is Pablo Sandoval. Back in 2012, he had 6 home runs in the playoffs, including 3 in the World Series against my Tigers. And he was just like absolutely unstoppable. It was like, he was Barry Bonds for a playoff, run. And it'd be really interesting to go back in time and see, like, did his cards get super hot and popular? I'm sure they did for 2012 standards. But I think it's almost like if you're holding some of those lower guys, like just pay close attention when baseball playoffs roll around.
You absolutely
sell the hype.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
I want to hear Phil's thoughts.
Yeah. So I think you see like the exceptions, the guys like Jeremy Pena, Randy Arozarena, where they just have like, it's not just one series, it's multiple series. It's like Tyler saying, it's these guys that aren't already haven't been nationally broadcasted or haven't garnered a lot of attention. Even Wander Franco would have fit this case in 2021, or when he had a couple of quick home runs and their team exited right away. So if there is a bump, it's related to individual performance. I think you guys already covered this well. Versus other sports, the team success doesn't matter as much in baseball because opportunity is so distributed. Roughly each offensive player is getting 11% of the team's plate appearances. This is not football where a star player gets a lot more chances, or in basketball where star players are getting more time on the court, more shots, more opportunity. So you've got distributed opportunity. As a result, somebody like Mike Trout, if he was in the playoffs multiple times in his career, it would be very unlikely that him himself could have an impact on the outcome of the series. Maybe a game, maybe an inning, but for one player to have an impact on the entire series. And if you look at previous World Series MVPs, you go down like the last 10 to 15, it's guys like Steve Pearce, David Freese, David Eckstein, if you go back 20 years, didn't Jorge Soler, like these guys who you wouldn't expect. So as you guys are mentioning, It's a game of numbers, small samples. Anybody could live up to that moment. People are understanding of that. So if you don't get one of those guys that is an exception, like a Jeremy Pena, even with him, there's still a boom bust period. But I think once people start to understand, like, this affects the way that we perceive this guy's long-term outlook. So we need to adjust our pricing, our floor of this player. Then I think that's when you see a bump that's sustained, even if there is a softening in the offseason, like there almost always is with all of these situations. So distributed opportunity. That's why the team success doesn't matter, and distributed accountability as a result of that. Somebody brought up the quarterback. If they lose, it's their fault. Whether it is or not, they get blamed for it, right? In baseball, it's not one person's fault. It never is. So
unless it's Clayton Kershaw having a 1.62 ERA to start the game, it's kind of his fault.
That is true.
You can't come back from that. Can I just also say, I agree 100%, Phil. The average quarterback I just looked up this year has 34 pass attempts per game. And that's not even on the teams that are pass dominant. That's just the NFL average for any given team. For a player to have 34 at-bats, it would take about 9 games. So it's just one of those things where they're touching the ball so much compared to a baseball player. And it's just, you could have, like we saw with, who was it that hit the ball? Nick Castellanos. That was a home run in 5 ballparks, and it had a 61% hit probability. It was a barreled baseball, but it turned into a double play. And so it's just, that's baseball. And you can't hold one player accountable. And you'll notice the best teams are usually the teams that click at the right time and they have a deep roster. And that's why Angels couldn't do anything with Trout and Ohtani. It's just baseball.
It'd be like the same starting pitcher going out there every day, every game, right?
Yeah.
Like the quarterback analogy. The closest we've seen to that was when Bumgarner just wanted to go out for every game and pitch, and was like, let me close, let me pitch, let me start, I'll do it all. I'm down.
And that should be like praised for generations, and that's a bit dramatic, but it should be praised for years because what he did was special and not done by anybody else, in my opinion. So
I'm pretty sure in San Francisco that will be praised for generations. There's probably a lot of kids named Madison who are
from those years.
Yeah, about 11 years old right now.
That'd be interesting to look up. But
I always find that that's interesting that the pitchers' cards don't go for as much as hitters, like, because the pitchers really have so much to do with the game. They touch the ball all the time. But it's the offense. Everybody loves the offense. Chicks dig the long ball, right? And so, but it's like the pitchers really have so much to do with the game.
It's just one game. It's just one game.
So even 5 or 6.
Yeah. And now a small portion of one game, like literally like 15% of the time they're relevant. So I think,
but in the playoffs,
I think it also hurts their collectability because it's tough to relate to a guy that's not there often. I think that's why hitters have a little bit of an advantage, but that is still a good point. I mean, you can't say that Kershaw isn't any less impactful than anybody else on that team, really. Well, maybe this year, but
Lance, why do you say that?
I just think, like, in the playoffs, I mean, you only have a few games to go, right? Like, one pitcher could make a huge difference in a series of 5 games, right? 20% of the playoffs is, due to this one guy, or maybe 40%.
Bumgarner, Sabathia.
Right. And so, like, a pitcher can really, like, rise up and become the reason why a team, like, wins a series in the playoffs.
Well, for sure.
But they don't get any love.
Incredible and lose.
Yeah,
like, 2 of the best starts we've seen in the playoffs were Strider, 7 innings, 1 run, and then Wheeler, who was like, I think he struck out like 10 guys. Sure. Neither one of those pitchers got the beloved W.
Right.
So I think those starts will just sort of drift away out of our memories.
But pitchers just don't get the love in the hobby, right? Like,
no.
Yeah.
Ever.
Are you just saying that because you are first cousins to one of 3 players all time to have a postseason no-hitter?
I kind of wish that pitchers got a little bit more love. That's all I'm saying.
Lance is related to Roy, for those that want to know. Producer Roy Halladay. So.
I've got some 97 Bowman Chrome in the storage unit. If you want to talk about it, we can rip it on this on the channel maybe.
I'd love that.
Awesome.
Tackle fractures.
All right. Any final thoughts on playoffs before we end this episode? I think we're all in agreement. It's in the moment. People can get hyped up, but there are rare occasions where it can become their legacy, like Mariano Rivera. Well, for actually Derek Jeter right? Chris's example, Rivera was getting blamed, and I agree. But Derek Jeter, we can look at Clayton Kershaw. That might be his legacy now because it's such a big sample size. But overall, I think we're in agreement. Correct?
Sure.
Awesome. Any final thoughts from anybody?
I have a quick question. So Yordan Alvarez has now played 3 playoff games and hit 4 home runs this year. Do we think that when let's assume Houston advances, do we think his cards will see a bump if this continues? If he homers multiple times in every series?
I think so.
Sure. Yeah.
I definitely think so. It might be short term until he gets hurt in April next year, but I do think so. Yeah. I hope he doesn't, but that's just kind of that's happened with him the last few years.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't too.
But he's building a case for himself as a postseason performer. That's for dang sure. But
absolutely.
Other than that, if you enjoy our videos, make sure you go subscribe, like, comment. If you want to be really cool, share and tag us, and be happy to repost it. Feel free to reach out and follow us on Instagram as well. Ty is mainly in charge of the Spitballin Cards Instagram page. So if you want to talk to him directly, say anything mean about anything, feel free to reach out to Ty if you don't like the content. Other than that, thanks for watching. We'll see you later this week.